The world believed they had seen it all when Cristiano Ronaldo, one of the most celebrated football icons in history, and Georgina Rodriguez, the woman who had stood beside him through triumph and tears, finally appeared to tie the knot. From red carpets to luxury yachts, from the glowing smiles on Instagram to the carefully curated family portraits, everything about their union screamed perfection. But what if all of that, every picture, every headline, every declaration of love, was built on a foundation that wasn't entirely legal? What if behind the diamonds, designer gowns, and public affection lay a truth that could shatter the illusion of a perfect marriage? It all began quietly. No explosions, no dramatic courtroom scenes. Just whispers, subtle movements behind the scenes. A name resurfacing when no one expected it: Irina Shayk. Once, she was the woman who held Ronaldo's heart before Georgina ever stepped into his life. Their breakup had been public, painful, and endlessly analyzed by tabloids around the globe. But Irina had moved on, or so everyone thought. She built her career, had her own relationships, and seemed far removed from the man she once called her love. But what no one knew was that something had never truly ended between them. Not legally, not entirely in early reports from close insiders. Irina was said to have quietly consulted legal experts months before Ronaldo's supposed wedding to Georgina. There were questions being raised about the status of Ronaldo's previous relationship with Irina, specifically whether certain documents and agreements that had been filed during their years together had implications under Portuguese or Spanish law. Some legal advisors began to suggest that if certain cohabitation clauses were recognized under applicable civil codes, Ronaldo's union with Georgina might not be as simple as it appeared. The media didn't catch wind of it at first. Ronaldo and Georgina were living their picture-perfect life, attending galas, appearing at award shows, celebrating birthdays with extravagant gestures. To the world, they were the epitome of modern romance, a self-made woman who captured the heart of a global superstar. But in the shadows, Irina was preparing something that could change everything. Not out of jealousy, insiders claimed, but out of principle. "There are things people don't understand about how it ended," one source close to her said. "She was hurt, yes, but there were promises, commitments, things that weren't handled the way they should have been." In one particular incident, an unnamed lawyer who had worked briefly with Ronaldo's team was reportedly approached by a representative from Irina's camp. The conversation was brief, discreet, but it raised alarms. The representative asked a question that would later become the seed of chaos. Has Ronaldo ever finalized the legal dissolution of his domestic partnership agreements from 2015? That question, simple as it sounded, carried enormous weight. In some jurisdictions, long-term domestic partnerships, especially when combined with financial entanglements and shared property, could carry the same obligations as marriage. If Ronaldo and Irina's former life together had ever been registered in such a way, or even interpreted as such, then legally any marriage after that could be considered invalid until the first arrangement was formally nullified. At first, Ronaldo's legal team laughed off the idea. They were confident that nothing of the sort existed. Ronaldo, after all, had never been married to Irina. They had dated, loved, and parted ways. End of story. But as weeks passed, more information began surfacing, including old legal filings related to shared assets, property transfers, and confidentiality clauses from their breakup settlement. And among those documents, a peculiar contract appeared, one that was meant to protect both parties from media intrusion but, in its fine print, mentioned a civil cohabitation agreement under Spanish domestic law. That line changed everything. When Georgina found out, it wasn't through Ronaldo, it was through a journalist who called her management team for a comment on the rumors that were beginning to circulate. The question caught her off guard. Does Georgina have any comment on reports suggesting Ronaldo's marriage might not be recognized due to a prior civil union with Irina Shayk? The words hit like a hammer. Her manager, unprepared and stunned, declined to comment. But that moment marked the beginning of a storm that neither Georgina nor Ronaldo could contain. Behind closed doors, sources said tension erupted. Georgina, known for her composure, reportedly confronted Ronaldo about the rumors. "Is there something you haven't told me?" she demanded, her voice trembling not from anger but from fear. Ronaldo, equally shocked, denied any wrongdoing. He insisted there had been no such legal tie between him and Irina, nothing that could affect their current life. But even as he said the words, his mind began racing. He remembered meetings, signatures, documents from years ago, things handled by lawyers, assistants, advisors. Could something have slipped through the cracks? Irina, on her side, wasn't making public statements, but her silence only fueled speculation. Paparazzi began following her every move again, analyzing her expressions, her outfits, her social media captions. Every cryptic post was dissected for hidden meaning. One in particular sent fans into a frenzy. A photo of her holding a pen, with the caption, "Some signatures last forever." The internet exploded. Was it a hint, a warning, or a simple coincidence? Meanwhile, Ronaldo's PR team scrambled to control the narrative. They released statements reaffirming his love and commitment to Georgina, emphasizing that their relationship was built on trust and family. But the legal whispers refused to die. A Lisbon-based legal expert even went on record saying, if Irina can prove a domestic partnership existed and was never legally terminated, it could have implications on any subsequent marriage or union. Georgina tried to maintain her usual calm, attending events and smiling for cameras. But those close to her said she was deeply shaken. She felt betrayed. One confidant said, not necessarily by Ronaldo, but by the situation itself. The idea that another woman could legally question her place in his life terrified her. In the following weeks, meetings took place in secrecy. Ronaldo's lawyers worked day and night to review every old document, every contract, every agreement that had ever passed between him and Irina. One late evening, a senior lawyer reportedly called Ronaldo directly. "There's something you should see," he said. The document in question was a Spanish notarial record from 2014, a declaration made jointly by Ronaldo and Irina confirming shared residence and property management during their relationship. While it wasn't a marriage certificate, the phrasing was dangerously close to what Spanish law might interpret as a domestic partnership, especially given the duration and financial links. It was a technicality, but a devastating one. Ronaldo's heart sank as he realized the gravity of the oversight. In a world where every detail of his life was managed by experts, one small, forgotten piece of paper could threaten to unravel his entire image. The legal consequences could be managed, but the emotional damage to Georgina, to their children, to his family was immeasurable. Behind the scenes, Irina's team had already filed an official request for clarification with the Spanish Civil Registry, seeking to determine whether the document carried any active legal standing. To the public, this move was spun as a mere legal curiosity, but those who understood the implications knew better. It was the first step toward establishing that Ronaldo's new marriage might not be recognized under certain jurisdictions. When the news broke, the media went wild. Headlines screamed about Ronaldo's secret legal drama and Irina's revenge. Talk shows dissected every angle. Was it a power move, a desperate grab for attention, or genuine justice for something unresolved? Through it all, Georgina's silence spoke volumes. Her usually vibrant social media presence grew quiet. The smile that once lit up her public appearances now looked strained. She was standing beside a man she loved, but suddenly, the ground beneath her felt uncertain. Was she truly his wife in every sense, or just in name, bound by love but not by law? For Irina, it wasn't about the headlines anymore. Insiders said she felt wronged, and this was her way of setting the record straight. Not out of spite, but closure. "It's not about ruining lives," she told a confidant. "It's about truth." But the truth, as always, is never simple. As investigations deepened, Ronaldo's legal team prepared for what could become one of the most unexpected celebrity legal sagas of the decade. A battle not fought in stadiums, but in courtrooms. Not with goals and trophies, but with signatures and seals. And somewhere, beneath all the glamour, the heartbreak, and the speculation, three people, Ronaldo, Georgina, and Irina, found themselves trapped in a storm none of them truly wanted, but none of them could escape. Because when love, fame, and legality collide, the fallout is never just about paper. It's about pride, pain, and the fragile boundaries between what's real and what the world only believes to be real. And this was only the beginning. The world had barely caught its breath from the shocking revelation when new tremors began to shake the carefully built image of Cristiano Ronaldo and Georgina Rodriguez's perfect love story. What had started as whispers about legal documents was now morphing into something far more complex. Something that threatened to drag families, friends, and entire reputations into the storm. Days after the first reports broke, Ronaldo's mansion in Saudi Arabia, usually a sanctuary of luxury and peace, became the epicenter of chaos. Behind closed doors, the atmosphere was thick with unease. Georgina, dressed in a simple silk robe, sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone. The endless notifications, headlines, and gossip clips were becoming unbearable. Each new alert was another stab to the heart. Marriage invalid, Irina's legal challenge, Ronaldo trapped between two women. The world wasn't just talking. They were judging. Ronaldo walked in, his face pale and drained. For once, the man who had conquered every stadium in the world looked uncertain, almost vulnerable. He sat beside her, his voice quiet but firm. "Gio, we'll fix this." Her eyes met his, filled with pain. "Fix? Cristiano, do you understand what they're saying out there? That I'm not even your wife. That everything we've built is a lie." He tried to reach for her hand, but she pulled away. Silence filled the room, only interrupted by the distant hum of reporters gathered outside the gates. Meanwhile, Irina was in New York, far from the chaos yet very much at the center of it. Her team had warned her that the situation was spiraling beyond control. What started as a private legal inquiry had turned into a global media circus. She scrolled through the news, reading her own name plastered across headlines she hadn't authorized. Irina destroys Ronaldo's marriage. Irina's revenge after years. It was never meant to be this. That evening, she met quietly with her lawyer, a seasoned expert in European civil law. He placed a folder on the table, thick with papers and translations. "You wanted the truth," he said. "Here it is." Inside that folder were documents that could change everything. Records from Spain confirming that the cohabitation agreement from 2014 had indeed been registered. It wasn't a marriage, but it was binding. Under Spanish civil law, such an agreement recognized shared property and partnership rights, requiring formal termination before either party could enter a new legal union. Irina's eyes widened as she read. "So, legally it still exists?" The lawyer nodded. "Technically, yes, unless it was dissolved formally, which it wasn't." She leaned back, exhaling slowly. The realization hit her like a wave. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was law. And that law had the power to declare Ronaldo's marriage void in certain countries. Back in Portugal, Ronaldo's mother, Dolores Aveiro, had already heard enough to send her into protective mode. She was furious. Not at Georgina, not even at Irina, but at the world for trying to tear apart her family. She called her son late that night, her voice trembling with emotion. "Cristiano, you have to end this quietly. Settle it before it destroys everything." Ronaldo reassured her, but deep down, he knew it wasn't that simple. Any move he made could be misinterpreted. If he reached out to Irina, the media would see it as reconciliation. If he ignored her, the legal threat would remain. And Georgina. She was already on edge, questioning every silence, every look, every word as the sun rose the next morning. Reporters stationed outside Ronaldo's property caught sight of Georgina leaving in a black SUV. Cameras flashed wildly. Rumors spread instantly. "She's moving out. Crisis in Ronaldo's marriage." But sources close to her clarified later that she was visiting their lawyers, determined to understand every aspect of what was happening. She wanted answers, not gossip. Inside those offices, the atmosphere was tense. Lawyers went through files line by line, comparing dates, signatures, and legal terminology. One of them, a young associate, pointed out something crucial. The Spanish law may recognize the partnership, but it doesn't automatically invalidate marriages outside of Spain unless they were contracted under the same jurisdiction. It was a small relief, but a fragile one. The issue wasn't whether Ronaldo and Georgina's marriage was completely null everywhere. It was whether it could be challenged in any form, giving tabloids endless ammunition to question its legitimacy. Still, Ronaldo wasn't going to let anyone rewrite his story. He decided to take control. He arranged for an exclusive interview, something rare for him, to address the rumors head-on. Cameras rolled, and for the first time in months, the world saw him speak not as a football legend, but as a man fighting for his family. "I have nothing but respect for Irina," he began, his tone measured. "But my life now is with Georgina. Whatever misunderstandings exist will be resolved privately, with truth and respect." It was the right move. The interview was calm, dignified, and sincere. But even then, social media twisted his words. Some called it damage control. Others said he looked guilty. The digital court of public opinion had no mercy. Irina, watching from afar, felt conflicted. Part of her admired his composure. Another part ached from old wounds that never fully healed. She didn't want war, but she also couldn't back down from what was legally right. Meanwhile, Georgina began experiencing the emotional toll. Once a symbol of glamour and strength, she now avoided public appearances. Paparazzi followed her every step, desperate for a photo that could hint at a breakup. She spent most days at home, surrounded by the children, trying to hold together a world that was slowly slipping through her fingers. At one point, late at night, she wrote a message she never sent. It read, "All I ever wanted was to be loved without conditions, without comparison, without ghosts from the past." She stared at it for minutes before deleting it. Behind the glamour, the truth was painfully human. But the legal battle was only just beginning. Irina's team filed a formal petition requesting clarification on the validity of the old partnership under European jurisdiction. It wasn't a lawsuit yet, but it was enough to set in motion a chain of events that could force Ronaldo's legal team to respond publicly. Documents began circulating among journalists. Leaked excerpts, partial filings, sensationalized interpretations. Some were true, others were fabricated. The line between fact and fiction blurred. And the more both sides tried to clarify, the deeper the confusion grew. In Madrid, a reporter claimed to have seen official correspondence between the Spanish registry and Ronaldo's legal representatives. While the content was confidential, the reporter hinted that the matter was far from settled. The tension reached its peak when an anonymous insider claimed that Irina's legal filing had delayed the official registration of Ronaldo and Georgina's marriage in certain European records. This was explosive. Overnight, hashtags trended worldwide, #InvalidMarriage, #Irina versus Georgina, #Ronaldo drama. Ronaldo was furious. "This has to stop," he shouted during a private meeting with his legal advisors. "This is my family, not a soap opera." But no matter how hard he tried, the world wouldn't let go. Every past moment was being reinterpreted. Old photos, old interviews, even casual remarks were now being turned into evidence by the public. Irina herself became a reluctant villain in the eyes of many. Trolls flooded her social media with accusations of jealousy and manipulation. Yet she stayed silent. To her, the truth was simple. She had discovered something legally unresolved, and she had every right to address it. Georgina, however, was breaking. Friends noticed her growing distance, her forced smiles. She wasn't angry at Irina. She was heartbroken that her love story had become a battlefield. In a quiet moment, she sat beside Ronaldo, her voice soft. "Do you ever think we were cursed?" He looked at her, his eyes weary. "No, just tested." But those tests were far from over. Because as Ronaldo's team prepared their legal response, Irina's lawyer received new information. A notarized confirmation that the partnership agreement had indeed been active longer than anyone thought, overlapping with the earliest stages of Ronaldo and Georgina's relationship.